Welcome to Andrea Lake 101, the making of a billionaire. Why the fuck is it called that, you guys? People hate billionaires. We absolutely do not need these mega gazillionaire people that we are having right now in this country. However, it negates the fact that there are always going to be very, 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 very large companies. Today, we're going to take an example of a company that became a very, 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 very large company, Justin's Peanut Butter. Justin's Peanut Butter started in Boulder. It was a small, awesome peanut butter company that had delicious nut butters, right? And in 2016, they sold to Hormel Foods for I think it was like $286 million. Let me check that really quick. It was $286 million. Good memory for numbers. Wow. So Justin's Nut Butter sold to Hormel Foods for $286 million. The founders got a great exit, and you and me and us, once again, lost the chance to support a small business. And small businesses, quite frankly, treat their employees, generally speaking, very differently than large multi-billion-dollar private equity funds. Now, in the case of Hormel, they aren't actually technically owned by a large private equity fund, but sort of kind of. So this is the way that it works. This is how companies end up being owned by private equity companies. They either the original founders sell to a private equity company, like what happened in the case of my competitors over at Sticker Giant, who is owned by Ares Capital Management, which is a multi-billion-dollar private equity fund that you can go watch the episodes and see all about how that went down. But they sold their company for an undisclosed amount to a group called Resource Label Management, which is a consolidator, which owns like 30 different sticker print shops. This is a large company. Sticker Giant is a large company. I have a very, very good guess of how much that they do in revenue, but because their numbers are not public, I am not going to say, but it is a very lot. And the original owner, who I personally knew myself, John Fisher, sold Sticker Giant to Resource Label Group, which is a subsidiary or is owned by Ares Capital Management. And so all of a sudden, all of those people who worked for John Fisher, who ran a company just like I did, open book financials, profit participation sharing for their employees, etc., is now owned by a multi-billion-dollar private equity fund. And do they still do profit participation? Do they still actively pay their employees really well and pay a living wage? I have no idea. Right? I don't know the internal structure of anybody else's company, but what I do know is that when you are owned by a private equity company, a percentage of every single dollar that gets taken in goes to the private equity company. Yeah, sure does. So it goes to the investors who are now the owners of that company, and they're getting whatever type of deal or cut or whatever that they get. There's one pie and the dollars go somewhere. So in my pie of Sticker Junkie, the dollars go to myself and to my employees, and right now to my creditors and to my debtors, right? That's where they go. And as soon as we're debt free, the pie goes between me and my employees. And I get most of the pie because none of my employees are, wait for it, please, because we just took on a bunch more debt so that we could do a bunch of expansion. $2.7 million in debt. That's just only me. If I go out of business, I have to figure out how to pay all of that debt back, and my employees go find a new job somewhere else. So when we get onto the other side of the hill, I get the biggest piece of the reward from the profit pile. However, so do my employees, because that's my ethics. That's what I personally believe, actually, me as a human being, is that we all are the ones building the company. I have way more risk and I will get more reward, but everybody will get reward. And it is becoming a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller amount of companies that function and that operate that way. Why? Because most people want to retire at some point, right? And so at some point, they sell the company, or they built it with specifically the intention to sell it. And private equity companies are always purchasing things. And it sort of doesn't really matter what level of a company that you have. There are consolidators and people that do different roll-ups of different types of industries, of different types of sizes of companies, etc. And then once the amount of roll-ups that they have done is large enough, they themselves will get purchased by a private equity company for a whole lot of money. As a result, private equity companies own 84% of everything, right? That sucks bad. And the thing is that doesn't have to suck bad. It just does. Why does it suck so bad? I keep trying to make like a very linear thing, so I'm going to run this down real quick. In the 80s, the Reagan administration allowed lobbyists to purchase politicians, essentially, right? They allowed big lobbies to give lots of money to politicians that were running for office, and they did all type of campaign, whatever, new regulations around campaigns, which essentially meant that people could purchase politicians. Like in very plain English, that's what it equaled out to, which is what you're seeing super fucking clearly right now, and they're not even expensive. Another politician, I'm not even going to say which one or which side it was the Republicans, because they're putting more money into purchasing politicians right now. They just bought a new political seat for $32 million. They beat out a super popular double-digit winning incumbent candidate in a primary because they wanted their person to win this seat, and it cost them $32 million, which was 2-to-1 spending. And you can just buy politicians. Literally, there's campaigns where they're like, if we can outraise our competitor, then we'll be able to inform the population more, etc., purchase ad space, whatever. And because politicians are for sale, ultra wealthy people buy them. That's what happens. And so for years and years and years and years, there has been a campaign for decades, for multiple decades, particularly with the Republican Party. I am not a Democrat. I don't like either one of them. All sorts of things should have happened during Biden's administration to prevent what is happening right now. And the Democrats did not do it. They have failed this country. And everyone of us knows politicians are lying to us. There's massive corruption in the US government. People are stealing things all over the place. And you and I are being told plenty of money for wars. Okay, just casual, just a couple of them, just randomly from the we're not going to start any wars president. Plenty of money for all sorts of things, but not for healthcare. Not even any reform in the healthcare industry to make healthcare affordable again. Why is healthcare so out of control? Really good question, but that's a whole different podcast. And it is because the politicians who were purchased by insurance companies, by pharmaceutical companies, and by other really big lobbies that had invested interests in getting their dollars through healthcare. As a result, we're the only first world country in the world where our tax dollars are not paying for our health care, and we're being expected to pay. In my case, I got quoted recently again. My first quote was $1,900. I got quoted $1,300 a month for healthcare. I am 52. I am super healthy. I do not have kids. I am not going to have kids. $1,300 a month. Who can afford that? No one. No one. And then you buy this healthcare insurance and nothing's covered. You're just getting consistently denied if you need any actual level of care. And the whole system is broken, but the whole system is continuing to stay broken because we are so fractured as a country. So all of these special interests are purchasing politicians, and they really just only care that the politicians vote for them their way. And one of the things that large corporations lobbied consistently over the course of the last many decades is that they don't have to pay people a living wage. And so as a result, the living wage in this country has not gone up for 16 years. You heard me right. For 16 years. A living wage in San Diego County is assessed at $32 an hour. That was last year. And so obviously now it's about $34 an hour because of the price of everything is skyrocketing. Because of the war that we just engaged in for no reason at all whatsoever, there's a whole bunch of lies that are being told about Iran having nuclear capacity. That's just not true. But people can say not true things on media sources that they own, that they have purchased in order to lie to voters. And they say it in a tone of righteousness that makes it sound stupid. It makes you sound stupid if you don't understand or agree with them. And just say, well, do you want Iran to have a nuclear weapon? And you're like, Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. When are you done? They sure don't. Pretty sure they'd be launching them on us right now if they did. Wild. But so the same thing happened decades ago where George Bush lied to the American people and said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That was later proven to be a lie. And it seems very quite likely actually that George Bush himself was lied to by senior people in his team. However, this is a very common tactic to go to war. And a lot of people in the predator class own all of the companies that are making all of the dollars in defense contracts. When we do go to war, very beneficial for them, very not beneficial for everyone else. There is a really famous saying that things at some point will fall of their own economic weight. We are there right now. And because these large corporations and their lobbyists have been deeply in with the Republican Party for the last 16 years to block any increase in the minimum wage on a federal level. Meanwhile, they keep in place key indicators to see how the country is doing economically, right? Like gas is a key indicator, which is why everybody talks about it when gas goes up, because that's supposed to be an indicator of how the economy is doing. And the stock market is another indicator. Well, why are those things indicators? Because they used to be things that everybody could participate in, because everybody had extra money. So let's bring it back into things that we all understand, right? There was a post that went viral this week where a guy was talking about how employees at Sears all used to be able to buy houses. Absolutely true. They absolutely did. Everybody used to be able to buy a house. If you were a receptionist at a dentist's office, you could buy a house. This guy was using Sears as an example, right? Sears was a store for the younger people listening, although it's mostly people our age listening. Similar to like a Macy's, except for they also had like home appliances and stuff. And so it was like, I guess it was like a predecessor of like a nicer version of Walmart. And the pricing was pretty good. And it was a fantastic company to work for. You could work in their customer service. You could work as a clerk on the floor. You could work as a counter woman in the perfume department, etc. And you made enough money to buy a house. You could work at McDonald's as a cashier and buy a house with a partner, with another person. Was it going to be as nice of a house as the person that managed the McDonald's? No, but everybody could afford to buy a house. My grandfather was a master brewer for Miller's, and the guys on the factory floors all could buy a house, could have 3 kids, could take their kids to baseball games, could go on vacation, could go away for the weekend. A lot of them had second homes, lake houses. This was in Wisconsin. And that was just normal. It was just normal for everyone to do well. Now, of course, there was a tremendous amount of racism, and so not everyone was doing well. That's obvious. However, in the late 70s and early 80s, you really did have this sort of quintessential American dream where sort of anybody working any job could do baseline well. And like, look, maybe you didn't want the responsibility of a house. Okay. Maybe that wasn't your dream. Maybe you wanted to have an apartment and pay just like way less and use all of your money and travel around the world, or like you want to summit every 14er in the world, or some big goal that you have, but it didn't fucking matter what your goal was. You could do it. There's one woman that works for me who I adore, Michi, and I don't know if this is her goal, but I've used this to her as an example before, and I don't know what her actual goal is, but she loves books and she loves bookstores. And I said to her, if you want to like travel all over Europe and see all of the oldest bookstores in Europe, I want that for you. I don't care what your dream is. I want your dream for you. We have a couple of women that work for us that are super into F1. I want them to be able to go take vacations and go to F1 races. Like, this shouldn't be something that only very few people can afford to do. And because of the consolidation of wealth, that is the case. So you have all of these lobbyists that are lobbying on behalf of all of the biggest employers in the country. And when you have a company come along like Walmart and everyone transitions their buying dollars to this one monolithic company that is abso-fucking-lutely not paying a living wage, what happens is they put most of the mom and pop hardware stores out of business, most of the mom and pop cooking stores out of the business, most of mom and pop every kind of stores out of business, because simultaneously people were getting paid less and 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 less. So the only option that they have is to shop at Walmart. They can't go spend 20 or 30% more at a locally owned place, which, spoiler alert, is going to cost 20 or 30 or 40% more because they don't have the buying power. So they're not negotiating a super hard rate on some new blender, right? They have to pay whatever rate that company is willing to sell to them for. Whereas Walmart can say, okay, it's going to be this price right here, period. Or we're not going to carry them and we're the biggest seller of blenders in the country, right? So you have a couple of different models. You have like Costco, that's a very similar type of a place that's selling low cost items or items for a very good cost. And Walmart, Costco is doing its best to pay a living wage, and they're falling behind because the cost of living is rising so quickly. We had a 3.8% increase last month in the cost of goods in the United States. So if you went to the grocery store and you were spending $100 in April at the grocery store, you are now spending $104 in May. That doesn't sound that bad. That doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that this is going to be month on month on month on month increases, as we now are going to come up against oil shortages because of this ridiculous, incredibly unnecessary war that was just started on a whim, apparently. Yeah. And we're so overwhelmed with the information that nobody is even talking about the war in Venezuela, where we were just like, that's mine's now. That's ours. Okay. That leader, bad guy. We're going to kidnap him and his wife. So I'm like, was a deal made? Seems like a deal had to be made there. His wife, really? Extracting her from now a war zone? That doesn't sound like an arrest to me. I am just saying. Let's follow the trail on that and see what happens a year or two down the line. And now all of a sudden, the United States government is talking openly as if we just own all that oil now and that's ours. And I'm like, wow. Where are the grown-ups? Where are the grown-ups in the room? I feel like I'm going crazy on a daily basis. I'm like, this is why I always retract back and I'm like, am I really just the next contestant on jury duty? Because this is fucking insane. And like, what is happening next? This clearly is just a simulation because this is cuckoo pants crazy nuts. Okay. We have a guy in office who filed for bankruptcy 6 times in business. And because his homies own the news stations, the conservative media news stations, they have all of these talking head people who all said the same thing, which was profoundly untrue. And they said it in a tone of like, you're stupid if you don't know this. Well, that means he's a good business person. And I'm like, no, spoiler alert. It means the total absolute opposite of that. If someone told you that they had filed for bankruptcy 6 times on different companies that they owned, would you invest in their next company? I'm going to go ahead and say no. No, that doesn't make you a good business person. And so now, as our budget is just being driven into true, actual, literal bankruptcy right now by all of the things going on in the government, that is a whole other podcast, but it's cuckoo pants crazy, the amount of grift and corruption that's happening. It's bonkers. So in the midst of that, what is it like to run a small business? It's really hard. Yeah, I just pulled the numbers and small business bankruptcies are up 67% over last year because you get hit with tariffs and then just one crazy cuckoo pants thing after another. And the rising costs of everything, it's virtually impossible unless you're doing what we are doing over at Sticker Junkie, which is going for a concierge level of service. When I looked out onto the scope of everything when I came back into Sticker Junkie, and thank God I did, and thank God I did when I did. Thank God I came back into this company in 2023. Be virtually impossible to do it now, and it was super fucking hard as it was. But the costs of things are going up on a month-by-month basis now, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it every time you go to the grocery store, and you're so thankful when you go to the grocery store and stuff is on sale. If you're one of the 70% of people who is making actually less than a living wage. A living wage is going to be about $70,000 a year. $70,000 a year equals 33.65 cents an hour. That is a baseline living wage and you are struggling. You most likely do not have healthcare coverage if it is not covered through your job. If you're making $70,000 a year, you most likely have to budget what you're doing. And that's if you make $33 an hour. So as I'm looking at the landscape and coming back into this company of these very, very dire economic situations that we're in, I was like, okay, cool. Even in the Great Depression, right? Even in 1929, what didn't go out of business? Coca-Cola, hugest companies, Folgers, the biggest companies, food companies, and very large scale back then they weren't multi-billion-dollar companies, but what would in today's dollars be worth multi-billion dollars? So I was like, okay, cool. We got to go after Fortune 5000s. We cannot compete on the internet to sell 100 stickers for $27. That is a no. Number one, you're losing money on every single sale. One of my competitors, that's like a really small company, posted like, you're overpaying for stickers if you pay more than $27 for 100 stickers. I'm like, bro, if I could come in and sit down with you and show you your spreadsheets, I guarantee that you're losing money. You're not putting any dollar figure on your time. You cannot afford to have employees at that rate. If you do have them, you are paying them very, very low wages, period. There is no way around it. If you are paying somebody even $25 an hour, which, spoiler alert, below a living wage, that is what our lowest people are being paid right now. I am not a fan of that. That will be different by the end of this year. It is literally all we can afford to pay, and it is way more than most other places pay. It's crazy. It's crazy, but people that stay with my company, they will win as hard as winning can win because I will not sell to a private equity company. So this guy was like, oh, if you're paying more than this, you're paying too much. And I'm like, okay, cool. But you have to do a proof for that person, which is going to take 15 minutes. And this is a shop that declares that they don't use AI. And I don't believe that they do. And I'm like, okay, cool. So if that person goes back and forth with you one time, It just took you a half hour to create that and to get it on a sheet and to send it to print. So that's $13.50 right there. It's going to take you another hour total of time when it's stacked and gang run on a sheet with a bunch of other stickers to print, cut, pull the stickers, package them, put them in a bag or seal wrap them in whatever way and put them into an envelope. You're looking at least at an hour, most likely an hour and a half of time, of employee time. So just in payroll time, you're already going to be at $37.50 for those 100 stickers. That doesn't include the cost of the material or the vinyl itself, which is the lowest cost that you're going to have. Payroll is the highest cost. But what most people do is they're going to think this way. They go, well, a roll of vinyl costs this much and ink costs this much. And so it's only costing me $6 or $8 to make those stickers, those 100 stickers, 3-inch stickers. And I'm like, no, babe, that's your lowest cost. Your employee cost on top of that is going to be about $37.50 and that is not including the additional 25% that employees cost in additional taxes that your employer pays on your behalf. Because when you pay Social Security tax, your employer pays an additional quantity of Social Security tax. 25% times that's 10. So your actual payroll time for those 100 stickers is going to be about $46. Your material cost is going to be about $8. And that right there is $54. So in fact, you are very much not overpaying. If you are paying $70 for 100 stickers, we're barely breaking even because we don't make money on any order really that's less than like $150. But the clients that we have that order from us long-term, like you don't have to do a proof the next time. It is quicker the next time because the artwork is on file. But because we are a tech company that creates private customized back pages for every single client, our stickers cost more. We're also faster and we have the highest quality material and you can get our people on the phone and we're just better. And so we wanted to create a concierge level of service and that's more expensive. And one of the reasons that I did that was because I could see the economic devastation coming towards us. And once Trump got reelected into office, because there would just be different policies. They were very clearly outlined in Project 2025. I don't know why nobody took that seriously. Exactly what's happening right now is exactly what was planned to happen. And it's their intention is for it to get much, much worse. It's all in there. You can just read it. You don't have to fucking keyboard warrior me. And we can see that with the number of farm bankruptcies that have happened, the amount of corruption that's happened in the government with, instead of our American farmers getting $40 billion in relief, Argentinian farmers got $40 billion in relief. I wonder why. Follow the money on that. My friend Tizzy at Tizzy ENT, I explained to him how you could see on the blockchain what was happening there. And he said, you have to do a reel about that. And so I shall at some point do a reel about that. But we couldn't have a reel go super viral. And I'm guessing that when I do finally release that reel, it will go super viral because it's very, very clear what's happening with the corruption of the government. And when people say like, oh, through the crypto coin, if you understand how to read algorithms, you can literally see the theft on the blockchain. It's not hideable because all of the transactions are evergreen, always there. You can always go backwards and see what happened on a blockchain. That's how they work. Yeah, and that's not a good place to be doing the things that are being done with money transactions there because it's very, very figure outable in reverse what happened. So if you don't hold power forever, it's going to be very unpretty. The consequences of the actions of a lot of people of what they're taking now in 4, 5, 10 years, whenever this nightmare, literal, actual nightmare is over, there will of course be trials. There will of course, like all of this stuff eventually will fall of its own economic weight. And what's happening right now is that the economy is being so decimated and that these lobbyists have for so long suppressed a living wage while simultaneously allowing private equity funds to purchase like 42% of single family homes. There's so many factors that go into this, but all of them reach back into political corruption and lobbyists and very wealthy people being able to buy politicians. It used to be that politicians would vote on our behalf. That's how they got voted into office, is that they went and cast votes that their neighbors would agree with. And now that you're seeing like data centers go in that nobody wants, that are a terrible idea. And you're seeing, our money just be siphoned out, like what happened with, instead of American farmers getting bailouts, Argentinian farmers got $40 billion. Inexcusable things are happening in the government. Things that people will go to prison for a long time. And things that there should be grown-ups in the room across party lines that are not allowing this to happen. However, Let's bend your mind for a second here, kiddos. Now, I have recorded this podcast that I'm recording right now several times over the last year where I explain all of this. I think we are going to call it the politics of greed, where I have explained over and over again all of this. However, generally speaking, it's so fucking infuriating. And I am 52 years old, which means perimenopausal rage is my friend. And I'll be drinking a glass of wine and explaining it. And I'm so fucking angry that I delete the podcast because there are not grown-ups in the room. And the quantity of ridiculous fucking shit that I hear coming out of people's mouths is just really easily, provably untrue. But there is no consequence for lying. Fox News only one time ever had a consequence for lying. They had to pay $787 million to almost $1 billion to Dominion because they kept lying about the 2020 elections being stolen, and it was causing reputational harm and damage against this voting systems company. So they got their $787 million settlement, and then Dominion ended up selling allegedly to a friend of Elon Musk's. That's not good news. That's not good news. But they did end up selling their company after getting a $787 million settlement from Fox, because at some point, if you do reputational harm to a company, they can sue you. You guys, I just Googled it to see if that was the actual settlement amount was $787 million. And it was in April of 2023. So fucking banger memory, Andrea. $787 million. And Fox News' defense in court was nobody should take Tucker Carlson seriously. We are not a news agency. We are an entertainment agency. This is their lawyer's words. I am not making this up. You can go read the transcripts. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly right. They're not a news agency. I personally believe that there should be a class action lawsuit for trillions of dollars that all Americans should file in coordination against Fox News because they fucked over America so badly. Yeah, I sure do. Who wants to lead that charge? Because we have actually a felon, a 34-time convicted felon running the economy of the United States, who also is a multiple-time failed business person. The one thing that Donald Trump is very good at is marketing. He's also an expert level at speaking in bumper sticker. He also, when I met him in person, because for spoiler alert for anybody that doesn't know, I was a contestant on The Apprentice. I did not expect to like him because I didn't expect to like somebody so unethical in business. And my mentor said, do not go on that show, and did not have a high opinion of Donald. And when I met him, I was surprised because he was legitimately really funny and really charming. And then when I see like how badly he talks about Barack Obama and how badly, he treated him, and they're sitting next to each other at, I think it was Jimmy Carter's funeral. And there's this famous picture where Donald Trump is making Barack Obama laugh. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know what to tell you. He's legitimately funny. Like he'll legitimately have a funny one-liner here and there. I don't know how funny he is anymore. I mean, obviously there's clearly been some cognitive decline, but I know him personally. At the time that Donald Trump was running for the presidency, I actually still would have been able to get a hold of him if I wanted to. And I did not vote for him. Do you know how beneficial it is for an entrepreneur to know a president? That is like hand walked right into some of those pretty government contract monies. Would you like to know that governments in the United States, probably spend $700 million annually on stickers, at least? Think of it. NASA stickers, tons of them everywhere. Warning stickers, construction site, everything has stickers. So when we have a lot of government contracts that we use now in different states, and it's not just at a federal level, at a state level, like it's very beneficial to know a politician if you are an entrepreneur, because they have contracts for literally everything, including nut butter and coffee and stickers. And didn't vote for him. Why? Because I did not think that somebody who has 6 corporate bankruptcies under his belt is the type of person that I would want controlling the largest economy in the world. That seemed like a real bad idea to me. I created a sticker recently that's called Make Politics Boring Again, because the people that we should have running politics are boring ass economists, long-term thinkers, warm milk, just nothing, just boring as shit. Maybe has like a non-alcoholic beer while they're, watching the game and goes to bed at 10 o'clock. That's who I want my politicians to be. I do not want them to be the ones that are the best at debate. They're the best at sounding like condescending assholes if you don't understand something and making you feel stupid, which is a skill set that a lot of these politicians have. I want someone that's just like sincere and super boring. Okay, but back to the main plot. But so, inevitably, I'm going to miss threads on this, okay? So I'm going to go back and re-listen and pick anything up that I put down because I literally have friends driving to my house from all over the world right now for Sedona Magic this weekend. So I do need to wrap this up. So, and I don't have time to re-record it. So it's this or nothing. So you guys are just getting what I really think. And you can hear the underlying anger in my voice. I'm hot right now, because I am so fucking mad about the misappropriation of our dollars. I am so fucking mad that these media sources for decades called it free healthcare. It is not free healthcare, bitch. It's our fucking tax dollars being allocated towards healthcare because that's one of the most important things that we need as a society. Okay? And being allocated for Social Security, which, spoiler alert, we paid into. Okay, none of this is free. And now it's being drained and spended and stolen just on the reg, just in plain daylight, by the same dudes that are all up in the Epstein files that said we're going to release the Epstein files. But guess what? Then they just fucking didn't. Okay. I cannot. But I am going to blow your mind apart. We're going to do an exercise right now. I'm going to give you guys a second. What is the largest industry in the world? What is the industry in the world that is the biggest industry? Now, I asked this at the recent fucking very fancy pants conference that I went to at Summit. You can Google summit.co and check out that business group. It's one of the business groups I'm in. And I asked a bunch of fancy pants, very fucking smart people this question. Super smart people. I asked the former CEO of, I can't say which one, but a former CEO of a Fortune 100 who's now just like a board member living a fabulous life. I asked very fancy pants people this question, and they gave very, very good answers. Spoiler alert, they were all wrong. But what is your answer? Now, if you said energy, really good guess. If you said finance and banking, also really good guess. If you said agriculture, also really good guess. However, no, that's not right. That's incorrect. The biggest industry in the world is, drum roll please, blackmail. That's right. It's the biggest industry in the world because that industry controls every other industry. Yeah, so it's blackmail because you can get someone to do just about anything if you have a lever to push on that person that they do not want people to know. And it doesn't have to be the worst thing, but also the worse stuff you have on them, the better, because they'll do whatever the fuck you say. If you have go to jail for the rest of your life, shit on someone, which, spoiler alert, why was Jeffrey Epstein ever let out of prison the first time after being convicted of running a child sex trafficking ring? Really good question. Why are they called the Epstein files when Trump is mentioned in there 30,000 plus times with very credible allegations against him? Why aren't they called the Trump files? Good question. However, these are not just the worst of a child sex trafficking ring. There would be anything that would be embarrassing to someone, and then it would get released if you don't play ball. I noticed, I am not saying that there's any correlation, but I did notice that information about Kristi Noem's husband was released after she had been let go from her position at Homeland Security. Also, while it had came out that she allegedly was having an affair on the US taxpayers' dollars, it would be chosen when to release any type of information about anyone, and there would be information about everyone to keep them in line. That would be the point of it, if, in fact, this was just a big old blackmail ring. Mic drop for the chick that gets less than 100 views on YouTube videos. It's ridiculous. Also, spoiler alert, we have 70,000 people that follow us across platform. And when I do living wage content or very specific stuff about the predator class, especially over on Threads, where I have like 25,000 followers, it gets so fucking badly suppressed that it is wild. I did something about Jeff Bezos and how he should pay a living wage while Jeff Bezos himself was trending. And it was very good information. And it was 22% engagement rate, 6% is excellent, and it was shown to less than 1,000 people. That's right. Content suppression is an absolutely real thing. And my content does not get frequently pushed because I'm talking about how every single platform is owned by billionaires, most of whom are at one point or another in the Epstein files, and some of them not even for anything, right? You have this really wealthy person, Jeffrey Epstein, who is very known as a wealthy private equity kind of guy. He's reaching out to you. He's super powerful. He has a lot of powerful friends. Maybe you respond to an email. You don't get mentioned 30,000 times. I am just saying. However, like when Bill Gates came out, because he was in the Epstein files, apparently he was having an affair, Melinda Gates referenced the Epstein files in her divorce, and how Bill Gates literally in one of the released files, which the people in the files now run the government and have chosen which pieces of information to release. Why are we, the grown-ups in the room, allowing this? Really good question. Why are we allowing this? Because most of us don't know how to change it. So I can't go just change who is in the top echelons of the government. And quite frankly, they're not going to give a shit about me. I own a little sticker company in San Diego, and they're not going to still be in power in 5 years when this is most likely when this is when I have a larger platform, and I will have a larger platform in about a year from now, a much larger. I am doing right now. I know that I'm all over the place. I'm going to listen to it again. I'm going to do a part 2. Please do not worry. You'll just have to come back and listen for more. When I come back in, I've been in this thing called portal time, where I'm just like relaxing and taking a breath and taking a minute, because we have so many sales right now that we can't actually take any more sales in with the current amount of equipment that we have. So I literally have a line of clients waiting. We did $1.8 million in revenue last year. We're doing $3.1 million in revenue this year. Yes, please, let's go. And because we can't take any more clients, I have been like just having some downtime, and it has been magical. It has been brilliant. It has been so very nice. And it also has had me like still scrolling and being on social media for my job and just seeing the worst of the stuff that's happening consistently, constantly, like so many slush funds and so much theft and so much corruption. It's something new every day, which is on purpose. It is a whole distraction campaign. And regular Americans are being led to hate each other. And Fox News has had for about the last 10 years a campaign going on where they have been really demonizing anybody that doesn't agree with them and saying like the left is basically evil, like horrible, evil, terrible people that just want the worst for everything. And I'm like, wow, no politicians are great. They can't be great because the super PAC lobbies can elect anyone because they spend millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to do so. And it doesn't matter which one it is. It doesn't matter if it's APAC or the NRA or the pharmaceutical lobbies or the aerospace lobbies. It really doesn't matter. It's whoever is willing to put the most cash on the table and get the most eyeballs in front of the most people are going to win. And now you have a consortium where most media outlets are owned by people who find it more beneficial to have an administration like the Trump administration than administration like Kamala Harris's administration, which would have been way more like a watchdog group, right? She wanted to decimate crypto. So you had a bunch of crypto billionaires who threw in with the Trump administration. She wanted to, which, Biden did not handle the crypto world well, the period, end of story. And therefore, it radicalized a lot of very, very wealthy people. Then you have all of these different fragments of people that have their own interest and their own thing that they find the most important. And they voted for whatever they personally found the most important. And then you had an administration now that ran on a literal campaign of lies. There's just no denying that. So it's wild that anybody is still loyal to them because they ran on no new wars. They've started at least 2, Venezuela and Iran. And nobody even talks about the fact that there's still an ongoing war in Venezuela with the United States. Like, what the fuck? And we're spending $500 million a day that we absolutely don't have. And meanwhile, SNAP benefits are getting taken away just for no reason whatsoever. It's a teeny tiny little infinitesimally small portion of the economy. So it seems to be a strategy to starve the bottom. And when I tell you that it is not a good one, like, has anyone in this administration cracked a book? Has anyone in this administration sees what happens when you literally starve people at the bottom? So basically barely strugglingly be getting by in San Diego is $22 an hour. And Like, you can actually get by on $22 an hour, but you're going to have roommates. You're going to have all kinds of things. If you're making $22 an hour in San Diego, multiple, you're probably going to be living with your family. If you're making $22 an hour and either paying no rent or paying very little rent, etc. At $33 an hour, that's when it begins to lift. That's when it begins to lift, because if you're making $33 an hour, then you probably do have a job that also has healthcare. So that's going to be a huge cost that's off of your plate. And you are going to be able to decide to sift and sort and figure out what to do. But because of the way that these lobbies work, and because we simultaneously allowed healthcare costs to get out of control, because we simultaneously allowed prison costs to get out of control, because we, the United States as a whole country, simultaneously allowed our defense budget to get profoundly, ridiculously out of control, all of a sudden we're spending way more money than we're taking in. We're taking in about $5.5 trillion in taxes, and previous to now, we were spending about $7 trillion a year. That math is not mathing. We are spending way fucking more than that now, by the way, and we do not have it. And you don't get to just file for bankruptcy as a country. That is not a thing. There is no out for this. Now we have huge other lobbies coming in to create massive data centers, which literally destroys the water in the areas of the data centers and takes all the power. I heard a figure that I do not know if it is correct or not. New data center in Utah is projected to use more power that Kevin O'Leary is lobbying to get put into Utah, that the citizens themselves did not want, and 6 politicians, for reasons best known to themselves, 2 screaming crowds that absolutely did not want this to happen, voted for it. Was there leverage that was applied there? Who knows? Was there dollars that were offered there? Who knows? Why would they do that when it would destroy the drinking water of their constituents? Really good question. You would have to ask the politicians that voted for that. So not only does it matter who we spend our dollars with, it matters who we elect into office, but then it matters that they do what they said they're going to do in office, which very frequently doesn't happen. Why? Is there leverage on that person? Is there dollars going to that person? It's always a good question to ask. So in the midst of this, Congress, which seems to barely be able to get anything done, has absolutely not forced companies, large companies, to pay a living wage. The way that they've gotten around this is that these same news media outlets scare the shit out of small business owners and say, you're going to go out of business because they're going to make you pay $33 an hour. To which I always say, no, bitch. You can actually write the law so that only a company that does over $250 million in annual revenue and has over 1,000 employees needs to pay a living wage. And we'll start there. And then we'll phase up and increase like 2 years later after all of these people, right, which would represent about 80% of employees in the country, are all making a living wage. And then after many years and a slow phase in, small businesses also would be expected to pay a living wage. And people are like, you can't possibly. So then these media outlets, which again are owned by the predator class, convince very well-intended, very good people, very good, hardworking people that they have their best interest at heart. And then they've demonized and villainized their family members and neighbors who agree differently with them in politics, and then have told the most outlandish, outrageous shit to people, so that at first, when they came to their family members and were just saying insane shit, most family members were just being nice about it and just being like, whoa, you sound crazy right now. And wouldn't really say anything. Now people are having certainly more open, more frank conversations. And you're not going to get a more frank conversation than me, because I am not a Democrat and I am not a Republican. And I actually am for the 77% of the country that agree on all of the basics. Everyone should make a living wage. We do not need to be interfering and interceding in wars on foreign countries unnecessarily. They're not sending their kids to those wars. Now there's about to be a draft, and your kids are going to the war, and your grandkids are going to the war. That's who's going to the war. Your kids, period. Unnecessary war, etc. There are so many fundamentals that we all agree on, but we have been lied to for decades, and thinking that I remember saying this to a really good friend of mine who came from a very religious family, and she said, well, they would never, it doesn't matter if you're not pro-life, then and I'm like, well, but actually when milk is $16 a gallon, they're not going to feel that way, because they're literally not going to be able to feed their family. And she looked at me and she said, I don't know. I don't think so. Because they've been so convinced that if you believe on a different side of abortion, then you're a terrible murderer, baby killer, and you're just evil and bad and wrong. And the people that convinced people that they need to vote with them because they're against abortion are the people that are driving the price of milk up to $16 a gallon. It's not there yet, but that's where we're heading. When you do something like create a shortage of oil, which is happening right now, every single price for every single thing goes up because every single thing gets transported to somewhere else by oil. Correct. It will also put a premium on electric cars. Also true. The whole thing is so gross and so corrupt and only benefiting a teeny tiny little itty bitty handful of people. Like if you're 50 and up, right? Which basically all billionaires are. If you're my age, I'm 52. Certainly if you are fucking 79 years old and you have won as hard as winning can win, you have built a company, you have net worth of $51 billion like Ken Griffin, who is just consistently railing against paying his taxes. Shut up. And he's like, you don't understand. And I'm like, bitch, I do understand. Actually, that's the fucking problem. That's why I'm so angry, because I do actually understand. Having studied geopolitics and global economics for 20 years, I see very, very clearly what is coming for us by 2029, and it is unpretty. Okay? Decades long of damage that's been done in the last year. So how do we fix it? Don't worry, I am getting to that. But the flaw in their plan of all of these like sort of large corporations that tacitly have gone along with this over the last year and a half, really over the last, 15 years, like frogs in a boiling pot of water, especially 40 years total, but especially acutely in the last 15 years. Who the fuck is going to buy your products? Merrill Lynch, going out of business. Morgan Stanley, going out of business. Are they going out of business entirely? I don't know. Whose money are they going to manage? Because spoiler alert, that's not where ultra wealthy people put their money. That's where upper middle class people put their money. Yeah, that's right. That's not a Swiss bank account. That's not safe. That's not diversified across multiple different currencies. As you see this currency go into chaos, who's going to need a financial advisor? Those jobs are going to be gone. Now we've just lost another 144,000 jobs to AI. So all of these people that were making, $175,000 to $400,000 a year all just got laid off. They're not getting jobs like that again, ever, payment wise, because we have voted in a class of politicians, purchased politicians who have voted against the best interest of most of the people who voted for them, because they got elected mostly through trickery and just lying to people. So the campaign was that Trump ran on, no new wars, I'm going to release the Epstein files, food prices are going to go down. All of us over here who did not vote for him were like 0% chances any of that going to happen. Please don't do this. This is such a very bad idea. A lot of us were screaming that. Now, 2 new so far unnecessary wars with threats to like go into Greenland, one of our allies. I'm sorry, what? Pulling out of the WHO. Very bad idea. Very bad idea. Coronaviruses are not over. A coronavirus is just an animal-borne virus. So that could be mad cow's disease, swine flu, bird flu, the avian flu, the hantavirus that you're hearing about now. Bubonic plague was a virus. So like COVID-19 was just another in a series of coronaviruses. And guess what? Animal-borne viruses, no bueno when a human being gets them, and no natural-born immunity comes out of it. It's insane. So all of these things are deteriorating rapidly, and voluntarily we have cut the world's supply to oil. What I am hearing, the word on the street, a little birdie might have said, is that all of this is being done in order to track people's travel, and very soon that there will be oil rationing. I do not even a little bit understand how there wouldn't be oil rationing at this point, because so much less oil is coming through into the market. It always takes a few months for something like this to be felt. Same with the tariffs. It took a little while for the pricing to go up, but the pricing is up. And now we have a Congress who literally doesn't give a shit about, as a whole, as a voting body, about the 70% of the people that can't afford to literally baseline pay their bills. What went viral earlier this week that I started to talk about earlier was the guy at Sears who was like, the customer service rep that I worked with, she had just bought a house. Right now, can you imagine? A customer service rep in this country is getting paid like between $8 and $14 an hour. Every single place that I looked in the country, the least expensive that it was to live was $21.12 an hour. That was Jackson, Mississippi. And so there is no place in the country where you actually can baseline afford to live for $14 an hour, let alone buying a house. Are you kidding me right now? So I'm really curious to see where it all goes next, but the answer to it actually is long and boring, just like real actual answers that work are, which is it's a 20-year plan to grow and build new companies that promise the following. We will not sell to private equity. It's a really hard promise. I'm literally trying to come up with a new structure legally once the company crosses a certain threshold to put the company into so that it will always be maintained. However, if it gets passed down in a heritage lineage, there's no guarantee that whoever I assign as an heir, their heirs or the heirs after that are not just going to want to sell it, because most likely stickers won't be their passion and they will. So there needs to be actually a structure in place that exists so that the company never goes into the hands of the private equity and always pays back into the people that work at the company. But ESOPs don't. There's I've looked into structures so far and I haven't found one that I actually believe will work. And I know that we could create one that works. It just hasn't been created yet because most people aren't purists in the way that I really am, of like, you guys, if you build a company, every single person in the company should win. And if you have the type of company that requires investors, the investors also should win, but not at the expense of the employees who work there every day. It's cuckoo pants nuts. And this is within my lifetime that this happened. This is within my lifetime that I saw people that were thriving at just regular everyday jobs, everybody sort of thriving slowly but surely, and then in a very accelerated way over the last 20 years, not being able to get by, not being able to make it. You know, my healthcare coverage when I was like in the year 2000 was $24 a month, $24 a month. I just got quoted $1,326 a month for healthcare coverage. The first quote was $1,900 a month. So that is the problem when you hold a couple of key indicators and say like the price of gas dictates how the economy is doing or the stock market dictates how the economy is doing. Almost nobody can afford to participate in the stock market anymore, number one. If you are like, well, I have a stock portfolio, that means you're a boomer. For sure, or a Gen Xer. That's who has those, okay? No younger person can afford that. And then the price of gas or the price of oranges or the price of any commodity that people would look at, a gallon of milk, a dozen eggs, that has been artificially deflated for decades. So the prices on these indicators that tell us how the economy is doing has been deflated and deliberately held low in order to make it appear as if the economy is doing well, when in fact the economy is only doing well for the elitely ultra wealthy. Now, somebody like me, I'm going to do fine because I'm always going to be somewhere in the top 20% once I rebound this company because I know how to build something that's going to go make money. My employees, they might luck their way into another situation where I believe this, but right fucking now, they are making between $25 and $32 an hour, and mostly between $25 and $29 an hour. And by the end of next year, our base minimum wage should be $41 an hour, because what you should have are employees that at a baseline level are making 22% above whatever a living wage is. Now, again, the way to change this is number one, through legislation to force large companies to pay a living wage and shut them down if they don't. Fine them every single day if they don't. But in order to do that, you would have to have politicians that were elected that would actually force those companies to do that, except for, spoiler alert, those companies are going to be some of the biggest donors to their campaigns because the lobbyists for those companies are allowed to fund the political campaigns of people running, and they fund both sides, those big corporations, to squeeze people to make it so that wages do not get raised. When people talk about Medicaid benefits or SNAP benefits, 76% of those benefits are going to fully employed people who are making poverty wages for very large companies like Walmart. And Walmart absolutely can afford to raise their wages to a living wage. They are actively choosing not to. So the 20-year plan is for me to grow Sticker Junkie. And I know it sounds crazy because I'm just a little sticker company owner, right? $42 billion annual space. That's how much people buy in stickers a year, $42 billion in the United States, is for me to grow a company and to show how very quickly you can do $1 billion in revenue within 5 years. So I thought it was going to take 7. I think it'll take 5. The economy most likely is going to completely collapse between here and 2029. It's impossible to tell exactly when, but for all sorts of reasons, that is my best guess. And however, even in the worst of times, really large companies do fine. They make it through and they still buy stickers. So if you look at like one of the largest beverage companies in the world, they're probably going to buy about $80 million worth of stickers. Let's say they slash that and they only buy 25% worth of their previous sticker orders. That's still $20 million worth of stickers. So there's still a whole lot of money going on in this industry, regardless of what the economy is doing. That is why when I was taking a very long view of what I was going to do with Sticker Junkie, I very deliberately chose to go after very, very large clients. And in the beginning, I would get flack from, people on the internet that are like, you're ridiculous and you're so expensive and we can't afford you. And I'm like, I know, but there are other companies that have a totally different structure that you can afford to purchase from. But I lose money if I sell you 10 stickers for $9. Are you kidding me right now? I would lose so much money on every sale. It'd be insane. And one of the parts of this 20-year plan, which we are 2 years into right now, is to explain the financials and the metrics of business, all business, because all business works this way. If you are a coffee company, right? Most coffee companies, most of them are little coffee shops that are sort of fighting for the local competition for coffee to come in. But the multi-billion-dollar companies, they're fighting for the contract with American Airlines, Hyatt Hotels, Denny's, any big food chain, any place that needs to buy a whole bunch of coffee at once. And that's the same thing that's going on in the sticker industry. And we have a lot of tech advantages going in our favor. And we also have a really good story going in our favor, because no matter what the company itself thinks, a company is run by people, and all of the people who are not billionaires and very importantly, some of the people who are billionaires hear what I have to say and they're like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I want to buy stickers from that chick. I fucking want more companies where people make a living wage. It is bullshit that I don't make at least $41 an hour. And if you live in a city, it is fucking bullshit if you don't make at least $41 an hour. 33 baseline to be thriving, to be able to take your kids easily to go to Legoland or to the zoo or to anything that's in San Diego, or to go out to fucking eat or to go to a Padres game. Everyone should be able to do that, to go to take your kids to the movies. Everyone should be able to do that every week. That should be like super normal, to go take a 3-day vacation and go hang out in Julian or go check out Idlewild or go up to LA for any of the stuff that it has to offer, to take 2 weeks vacation, to take 4 weeks vacation, to get supplemental maternity and paternity care when you have a kid. These things should be way fucking normal when you work at a large company. But the large companies are no longer feeling like they're in a position where they need to attract and cultivate a team. And most of them actually think, well, I only really need to do that with my C team. And I'm like, okay, cool. Let's see how that works out for you. So in proving out the building of Sticker Junkie, it's proving out, number one, how quickly we can very ethically grow a very, very large company, number one. And then number two, me talking to my contemporaries and my peers and my badass entrepreneur people that I know and that I get to meet, and the CEOs that I meet at the conferences that I go to, because I get invited to all of the biggest conferences. Although if I still keep talking like this, maybe not, but I'm still the cool fucking chick that was a professional fire dancer with Jane's Addiction, that owned the sales rights on Minecraft and Walking Dead. And I'm still the cool fucking hippie stoner chick that's going to go smoke a joint with you at a conference and make you feel like you're young and fun again. I'm pretty sure I'll still always get invited into those rooms, especially when they ask me to bring my fire torches. Let's go. And just convince them. Because when I sit and talk to these fucking profoundly disappointing boomer tech entrepreneurs, one thing that I promise you is that they don't understand how much it actually costs for their employees to live. They don't. They do not. They do not understand that $70,000 is barely getting by. They do not understand that they are paying their factory workers anywhere between $45,000 and $50,000 a year. You cannot live off of that. I created stickerchunky.com/living wage and see how much it actually costs to live around the country. It is idiotic and insane and untenable the way that we have structured the economy. It will not work. It cannot last. But what can work instead is if you and me and us, if we have a buying coalition like Little Blue Card is putting together, and I did convince them that they need to do medium blue cart, where it's who do we, you and me and us, buy from? What cereal company, what nut butter company, what coffee company, what candle company, what vacuum cleaner company, what sticker company. And then the moment that those companies, the moment that they get sold to private equity, fucking no more. $0 to you the second that you sell to private equity. Well, guess what's going to happen? Number one, the types of industries that we go into are going to become radioactive to private equity. So yes to that. And that way you would have private sell-offs to another individual or to a coalition of the employees that want to purchase it. And if it was a really cohesive, coordinated buying network where you were really expressing to people like, nope, this is our ownership, this is our structure, this is our pay scale, this is how much we pay, this is how much we want to pay next year, we need to hit this goal, and then we're going to do this. If you had every single industry like that, because they're all billion-dollar industries, kettles, coffee makers, doesn't matter. If we had all companies like that we were all buying from and supporting, then it would shift around very, 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 very quickly who the billionaires are. It really would. And that would shift around who the politicians are. It sure would. So it's a 20-year plan. We've been releasing little pieces of it as we go, and I will do a more cohesive closing out of the circle on this on the next episode of Andrea Lake 101, the making of a billionaire. And one thing I promise you is the 2027 goal is $41 an hour minimum wage in Sticker Junkie, and you are going to find out whether or not we hit that. The next raises at Sticker Junkie come in when we hit $9,315 a day in revenue, which most likely will be in June. We do have to hold that revenue for a month. As I mentioned, we had to take a total pause because we are literally producing as many stickers as we can right now. And we're at about like ballpark $7,700 a day in revenue. And we need to make more than that before I can pay more in payroll, especially because you guys, we just put in an offer on a lease space that's 3 times as big. I don't know if we're going to get it or not. They came back with not as good of a terms as we want. And quite frankly, this is a buyer's market. Yeah, it sure is. This one seems easygoing. Like they're saying yes to the build outs. So we're going to work on this. We're going to work on this. We have some ideas. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. And I might come up with something a little bit more creative that works out better for us because they want to make more than we want to spend. That always happens. And quite frankly, they could make even more than they want to if they give me better deals in the beginning. So I might come up with something very creative on a long-term 3-year lease and see how that goes. After that, we're going to build our campus. And I'm looking at between 40 and 100 acres of a campus somewhere on the outskirts of San Diego. And I will tell you the whole vision for that in an upcoming very fun episode. That will for sure be like a dirty tea episode. And I'll have way more next time. This has gone way, 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 way longer than I thought that it would, and it's for sure going to require a part 2, and it's either going to be called Andrea Lake 101, The Politics of Greed, Why It Matters Who the Billionaires Are, part 2, because it really, 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 really fucking matters, as you can see right now. That's it for me. I'll catch you next time on Andrea Lake 101, The Making of a Billionaire. Until then, enjoy your popcorn and enjoy your wine. And I will come in piping hot next Friday with all of the tea.